Let's talk about Elite Squad and its sequel, The Enemy Within. These two films are, easily misunderstood. Elite Squad, especially the first one, it premiered at the Berlinale in 2008. Funny thing was, in October in 2007, it sort of released already because a earlier cut of the film, when they were doing the subtitling for it, I guess they probably didn't change much from that cut if it was just out for subtitling. Was leaked, and approximately, I think, like 11.5 million people estimated to have seen it. Oh, sorry, not in October, in August of 2007. It was months before the Berlinale premiere, and then it ended up screening at the festival in competition, and it ended up winning the main prize, which sparked a lot of controversy. Like, it was seen as sort of a justification or glorification of the far-right police force, depicting them as sort of the enforcers against crime. And I think often goes to say that maybe some audience goers and critics who go to these film festivals, we've been criticized for literally another Brazilian film that, we lack general notion of world history. For not knowing more about like Brazilian, like the Brazilian military dictatorship from the mid 60s to like the mid 80s. But I think for them, a bit of media literacy of like whose perspective we are taking here and how we are supposed to like judge that, would have been in place for this, because I think the reasons are not really justified. I definitely see it when you watch Elite Squad, which centers around, yes, partly Wagner Moura's character, but it is way more about the two rookies that come in. So what you've told me, like in an earlier version of the script, and when they were shooting, he was taking more of like a backstep in the story, and then he took a larger presence in the film, and obviously is like even more of a focus in the sequel. I think it's maybe because people connect so much with Wagner Moura that like they see him as a hero so easily, maybe here, that they would sympathize with what he's doing. But I think that like that wasn't like, for the first hour you might be like, okay, where's this actually ultimately going? And I think it really like sticks the landing and makes a whole like, makes its point quite well. If there's like a clear point to be made, I think I got it. But yeah, you really have been speaking highly of this film. I think you brought it up a couple of times in the last couple of years. I finally caught up with it now that we are pairing it with The Secret Agent. So yeah, what do you think on this rewatch? Because you rewatched both films as well, right?
I rewatched both films. The second one literally before recording. I woke up earlier for it. We both lost sleep for this podcast. We are dedicated. I was actually at first, these movies are both on par. I feel like you have the same feeling with that. I think both movies are very much connected, but also are very different in terms of presentation. The 2007 movie, or like 2008, I guess. But in anywho, it's way more part of the chaos cinema. Again, you have to know in action cinema, because this movie sort of is an action picture. Like the director, Jose Padilla, was like asked about whether the Elite Squad films are actually glorifying the corruption and torture. His response was that his representation was truthful, and if creating a compelling action picture got that truth out to a wider audience, it's all worth it. So even he has said, at least I think the first movie is like an action picture. So in the 2000s, you had the chaos cinema, which was popularized by the Bourne films. The shaky cam, those quick cuts. You are not sure of the scene itself, but there's very much a lot of direction going on, of like right to left to up and down. Like, it was very much a handheld shaky cam era, and this movie is very much a part of that. The Elite Squad films, especially the first one, there's so much palpable anger in the first Elite Squad that I think combines very well with its presentation to like, it's just so much fuel, I feel like, in the first Elite Squad, to the point that I wouldn't necessarily change anything to it. And I think it's a great director's instinct that he noticed, oh my god, Wagner Moura, this kid's presence, I mean, because I don't know how old Wagner Moura was at that time, but like this man's presence is something else on the screen. And I think it's a great director's instinct to notice my two main performances aren't that compelling compared to Moa's. Andre is a bit more compelling than the other, so Andre does take a bit more of a presence in the movie than the other rookie does.
It feels like he's initially the lead of this movie, right?
Yeah. And a lot of the scenes with Andre, I adore as well. You got that scene when he's in that classroom, they're doing their presentation of the cops, and he's, like you said, he's sort of getting shumshacked by these kids that are also part of the problem. And again, the meat of these movies.
Like the part of the problem, I feel like the part of the problem is the discrepancy in the social standing. And also, then it also directly goes into them dealing drugs as well and being part of that. Like, but that's just because feels like everyone is in this. Like, you feel like every character you meet, even if they're like on the outskirts of it, are affected by whatever's happening. So you can't really escape the grasp of the crime, but also not the police.
In the beginning of the movie, Wagner Moura's character says, like, at a certain point we had 30,000 men and we actually could have finished it, but we just lacked the training and the funding. Like, it was possible, like his character says. And from that point on, you do feel like the police chiefs are holding back the force intentionally for their own benefit. For example, with the car part, one of the rookies has to handle the garage, and they are like, yeah, we are struggling. We are not getting the parts that we are deserved to fix the cars. And whenever we have to fix a car, it's always the chiefs or like one of the higher ups that gets priority. Hence, always holding back the force potential. And if they do cross the line, they just get transferred. I mean, the same with the academics in The Secret Agent. They always got put out somewhere else. The same here. You get either put in the kitchen or you get put wherever else it is if you cross that line. But yeah, I feel like I've said enough. Because I really adore the Elite Squad films. I think they're a really strong piece of cinema. But you hadn't seen them yet, so I'm very curious on your reaction.
I mean, to me, I was going into it with that reaction that it got from a notable amount of people, that I'm also thinking, like, if you critique a sort of institution and violence in that way by depicting it, there's inherently always something about it that is like that is thrilling in the framing of like an action movie like this. So is it like a contradiction to that? Like, how can you do that purely? And I think you can't. So in order to just do it as accurately and as nuanced as you can on a character level is probably the most justice that you can do it. Because it's like you go down this road of telling a story like this, then you really can't sugarcoat stuff just for the sake of like lacking controversy or like brazing over stuff. So when we focus on how much they just go in and shoot first, each time I'm thinking, what the fuck are you doing? And then you're sort of looking for, at least for the beginning, you're sort of looking for the justification of how much violence is on the counter end to justify their violence. That's your first step of like, immediately I feel like that's what we tend to do. And then when that isn't really happening, or maybe you see it, yes, it happens. Often it is a response out of fear as well. It's like the police is just as much a part of like this process of all of this crime as the crime itself is, as much as like the poverty is like enabling all of that. And it like, I think it very neatly in the second one is like, all right, this was just a brass tacks of like what's wrong with it on a smaller level. Let's show you what's happening, what's wrong on the higher level, and can you actually change anything about that? I feel like the second movie is taking a sort of approach where it's like almost a tiny bit sugarcoating it by the end of like how maybe you get out of this rut. And I think I would have liked it to stay a bit more real of what is actually accomplished. I don't know how much it taps into like, because it's the second one starts off with like there's a coincidence if like it resembles something in real life.
This film is fictional.
It's fictional, right? And no matter how close it is, it actually like it is just coincidental. Yeah, I think the first one felt a bit more grounded, and not that that's a critique if the second one then goes higher up, but it felt like that first one was a critique on we're on the shoulders of these police and military, like the BOPE guys, and seeing like how that wheel starts turning with like a large, like we talked about this. It's crazy to have like a recruiting scene, a recruiting montage in the back end of your movie. Because it feels like it's laying the groundwork maybe for a next film or a next story. And it's an interesting choice that I
told you, I literally asked you yesterday. It's like, Ewan, like I can't recall any movies having a boot camp, like a training camp in the second half.
Yeah, not a training montage, but like a boot camp scene. Because like there's training montages in like sports movies all the time in the second half.
Of course. But I was like, is there an actual like boot camp in like a war movie, a crime movie? And it's like you said, like I don't remember. And it's like even I looked it up, and it's like I don't really see any other movies that have this. And
because like the thing is, it's like it's not about building them up to meet that level of that, because like that would be a rise, right? Mm-hmm. This build up, making them malleable into these agents, is like a downfall for them on a character level. And
Wagner Moura's character wants to be out of BOPE. I mean, that's also
basically the whole movie. He wants to be out of it, right?
He wants to be out of it, and you also have the coming of the Pope, which rises the tensions of that. Hey, we have to clean this up, and it's also with this movie. I feel like with Elite Squad, I can easily I'm not sure. But I can easily imagine that very much, like with Hong Kong and like Japan, like all of that, with the triads and crime on the rise, where people are trying to look after a period, and it's like it's been bad. They are trying to look for other ways to make a living. That they go to these crime gangs, like hey, drug dealers on the rise, and then you have to act differently. For example, one of the scenes in the first one that I adore is that Wagner Moura's character goes to in his in their apartment, and he goes to his wife, and he's like, "Don't you ever render any judgment of my team again?"
Yeah,
and it's not a scene only done out of anger, and it's also like a scene that's done out of please don't cross this line of me being this BOPE agent. And me wanting to become a father, wanting to become an actual good individual. And it is so strong. That's why, actually, on the rewatch, I prefer this first one. Just a tiny bit more.
I think because the second one is way more the process of him trying to, like, I wrote down multiple times in my notes, is he even redeemable? Like, is there, like, no matter what he does, can he can't outdo sort of the bad that he's done as a sort of figure of this institution. And then the only way that it like ends with the story is like the way that yes, he could redeem if it takes it all down. And I think it would be more interesting for him if he doesn't get to do that. Not that it needs to be nihilistic and he needs to die, but he's like he's like the way that it like says it opens with him getting shot up, and I was like, this is how it would play out in an American movie. And it does sort of play out in a very American way towards the end. I feel like the way that it resolves it on a public stage of like outing people and stuff like that. And I thought that like slight hypocrisy that is pointed out in the story to be quite interesting. And also going way deeper on his himself, his character and how he's processing it. And I also was quite surprised, like when obviously like talking spoilers here, right, for the movies, when Andre is like, I thought he was going to be in the whole movie, and then he just quickly isn't, and I'm like, holy fuck, okay, that makes sense in that moment, but it happened so abruptly, and it like reminded me how quickly also in the Secret Agent some deaths feel, or like how abrupt and how out of nowhere they are, sometimes even happening off screen. And in this film as well, like in the first one, it opens with Matias and Neto is his name, right? Shooting, and I'm like, oh, this is part of the crime people. And then I realized later on when we're back to that moment, oh no, they're part of like the same, like this is a confrontation that is infighting, that like what to me wasn't 100% clear all the time is like, who's police and who's part of the BOPE. And I think it's pretty easy to understand once you like get a slight grasp on it. But like in the first couple of times where they confront each other, I'm like wondering, okay, who are you with?
We also always talk about like a scene that sort of encapsulates the movie. In the first one, there's like a tiny like 30-second scene where Wagner Moore's character is like with a team, and one of them is a sniper, and they are looking at a corrupt cop dealing with a drug dealer. And at a certain moment, they say like, never, wait, you know what, never mind, we'll pick him up later. And then all of a sudden, the sniper says like, if I shoot now, I can hit both. And he's like, oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Like, damn. I feel like that encapsulates that movie so good. And with the second one, the few notes that I have there is that at a certain point, with the invasion of Tanque, I believe the region is that they're, like he says, you know what these operations should be called? Should be called Operation Iraq.
Yeah.
Very, again, those digs.
But it's also what we didn't say is like the first one is set like 10 years earlier, right? It's set in 1997.
Yeah, in 1997.
And the next one takes place 14 years later, so it is taking place in like 2010, 2011.
Modern time,
when this movie was,
but it was also like 4 years earlier.
Yeah, and then it goes back a couple of years, but it like, I don't know why it, I guess, I didn't really get a sense of like the time
it does that to show Wagner Moura's evolution inside the bureau itself.
Yeah, but a lot of it doesn't feel like he's making a lot of big jumps once he's there, to be honest. Like, it feels like he arrives.
That's also what they're hinting at.
Yeah, exactly. He's like stagnant and sort of rendered.
Like his power in the field has been rendered useless. I mean, you've got that one scene where he's in the helicopter and he's actually leading the things, but then he realizes, oh, I've participated in the machine of cleaning this neighborhood up. The police and the main cop can actually come in and abuse it.
There's also one scene that I found to be really good when after Matias gets suspended and he goes to talk to him when he feels like there's a betrayal. He talks to the press, and then he comes to say like, oh, you fucked over the governor. He hates you now. You're on a shit list, right? One of the reasons why he isn't taken in, but I feel like Matias is still holding to that standards of fucking up corruption, but also like the way that it ends on the first one, very much motivated by his own self-interest and like the path of revenge that is just like fueled by rage, which, you know, seeking that self-righteousness whilst murdering yourself is like, you're never going to accomplish something truly like you're just adding to the machine. And the way that he says to him like, you're not going to change anything from within the political system, it's only going to change you. And I'm like, that's what he's trying to fight against, that like also, yes, changing him because he was a product of that regime itself, so in turn changing him is also partly changing the system. And Matias not being able to understand that or like see that, I found to be like a really well put together scene that resonated with me quite a bit.
The last quick thing that I have is also that I found quite noticeable is in the first one, when there was a funeral, you got the casket that is wrapped up in the Brazilian flag, and then you have Wagner Moore's character coming in and he puts the BOPE flag over it. And in the second one, it is reversed. You got the casket wrapped up in the BOPE flag, and then you got the Brazilian flag that is put over it, sort of as to put away this like, oh, this man was a Brazilian, you know, like more the nationality rather than the family part of the BOPE. So that I found also quite a very good directorial decision.
Yeah, no, I didn't even notice that, but that's true. Yeah. I mean, I also like the new characters that like take a forefront in the second one. That are like,
you got some recurring ones like Fabio, etc. Andre, one more.
Yeah, exactly. And then the guy who what's his name, who was like taking over as like the big corrupt cop. Essentially, what's his fucking name? He's such a disgusting piece of shit. It's crazy.
Well, the bigger piece of shit for me was the guy that
Who
is on
couldn't
that
walk
talk
2
show.
steps without being out of breath. It was crazy. I was crashing out this fat piece of shit. Sorry, no, put it like in the context of the story, he was so despicable. I hated that guy so much.
But it's also like, again, the being part of the propaganda machine on TV and then getting a role in the government. Oh,
yeah.
Hey,
I also like the invasion Iraq thing that you pointed out, like the clear like placement of a fake robbery to justify something else. Obviously, like that's what he's referencing with Iraq, but I think we haven't spelled that out yet. You called this movie also like it's quite brave in what it does. It's like so outwardly like showing you, no, this is the fucked up shit and it is happening.
Yeah, the shot that I sent you was 2 guys that are doing the cleanup essentially, which is something you never see in the movie. But like, hey, they're actually like trying to take the corpses out of the fire and like pulling their teeth out so they don't have any dental records of the bodies. Because
it is so easy on a story like this to like focus on the violence. That is the first set of violence, the killing. But the cleanup and the ongoing, like to keep this thing going, you wonder, oh, once you get the ball rolling, it is like rolling and the system's in place. I was like, no, it's not. If you want to keep that and you don't have corruption that is going all the way to the top where like everything is disregarded, then you do have to do this like cleanup that is incredibly dirty and so violent, even post killing someone, that like, I think the emphasis on that was like a striking point, like the disconnect of like being so high on the power, like the amount of times it focused on the sort of, oh, we got an election coming up, or like that sort of thing of like, that's the focus, that's how we go about it and how blatant it is. And it reminded me, you know, a lot of like some systems that are in place right now that are very current, that are happening right now, where they just like, we have information about people who are on the Epstein list, who have done some very wrong things. But will they ever be put to justice? Will they ever be like, will they be held accountable? And it's exactly what it's confronting.
I don't know what you're talking about, but something with frozen water. Yeah, something along those lines. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Also, one last thing, show note I had is in the first one, when they go around in the slums and they want to find the dealer and they shoot the lookout. And later in the first movie, they're like, fuck, like the mother came along, and it's like, all right, we're going back in, we need to find the body. And in the second one, that intention is nowhere to be seen, especially when spoilers, there are some prominent figures that die to trying to find this corruption. There is almost no intention to search for the body anymore, even though like they're more important individuals in the second movie than in the first. In the first, it's technically like a lookout, but in the second one, they are journalists essentially. Because I guess we said already spoilers, and there's no intention to find them, even from the editor themselves, which should be chasing this news, but it isn't doing that at all.
Yeah, it's also pointing out way more that it is like the mafia, the way more like in its organization, and like it's also. I wanted to bring this up. I think to me this feels way more like a Scorsese movie.
Which one? The second one?
The second one. Because it is very much taking that perspective of like showing the rise of these people, but then also going into the fall, which is something that Scorsese always does. And yeah, it definitely felt, maybe it's also the narration, which also was in the first one, but it feels the most like a Scorsese-ish type of crime movie. And like that wasn't something that I was looking for. I just felt that repeatedly in the film, the way that it also explains sort of cutting out the middleman for the cop at the first time, and then the sort of the Roca is his name, the way that he sort of takes a step up. I think the most one of the most tense moments was when he's like out with the 3 politicians, or like the 2 politicians and the TV guy, and they're like at a cookout or something like that, and he is holding his gun the whole time and no one is reacting to it apart from like, oh, he shot, so like, oh, loud noise.
Yeah.
But then he's like waving it around like as if it's the most normal thing, and I'm like, brother, I'm crashing out at just the thought of like him just accidentally shooting someone and then that probably not even mattering, because like it's baffling. So yeah, I also like the Varga character quite a bit. Like the way that he was like trying to push against it. It's obviously like like a counter hero to all of this.
Yeah.
Did you like that? It's like it's a bit messier because Vargas with his ex-wife, right, and his kid.
Well, it's at first you're like, oh, of course, but it actually makes sense because like she's already struggling with the man that she is in the first movie. It wasn't gonna be long before she left and like tried to find a correct person. And the last thing that I wanted to comment on was also the voiceover, because the voiceover in the first one, I think, is actually a necessity because you have to have some glue between the scenes. And if in the first movie it was in your script that the rookies are the main character, but your supporting character isn't as big as it is in the movie, then you have to fix that through narration. So I think in the first movie the narration was actually a necessity to have the structure of the first movie that he wanted to, and in the second one it gets capitalized upon that to actually explain the inner workings of it, which I think is a successful thing. And that's also, I think, he's actually a pretty great director, which, is he in director's sale? It's just like, he has done the
Narcos
Elite Squad movies.
Yeah, he was producing.
And then he's got like, he's done RoboCop, which obviously was a flop. And then it's like, okay, you've done 7 Days in Entebbe in 2018, and that nothing. And it just makes me wonder, because apparently from what I've read, like he really wants to expose police corruption, and it's like, was this the only movie you had in your like bones that you wanted to get out? Because it's like, I'm quite sad that he hasn't made another great movie besides these two, and we're like almost 20 years later from the first one.
Wagner Moura has recently talked about that, like early on when they did Narcos and he was involved, that like Netflix was way more hands off in all of their projects. And I don't know how much he can do what he wants to, if that's like hard to get funding or what's the status of his like latest projects are.
This makes sense. The director was actually involved as an executive producer and producer with Narcos. So that actually makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I said. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And he also directed, I believe, like a few episodes of the show. And that's why he's also like, I think Wagner Moura just recently talked about him on like a podcast that I listened to. Unhappy, Sad, Confused. And he was also like, to me, it was also interesting that with the Oscar nomination for Wagner Moura, he was asked like what he's doing next. And he said like he's making a smaller film with like an Argentinian director next. Then he's gonna do a play, and then he's doing his second feature film that he's directing, which is also going to be indie. So he said that like this Oscar nomination changed nothing about his plans in 2026, which I find quite interesting. Because I feel like he's a long shot of actually winning, and not that that would change much in the options that he has. I feel like he already has like has had like a bunch of options, and I think getting recognized for like an indie film like this is not really changing your trajectory that much. So I'm happy to see that he's like, you know, continuing on with projects that he seemingly is enjoying and getting something out of it.
Also, quickly, I would say Wagner Moura is better in the Elite Squad film than in the Secret Agent. That's maybe like a hot take. I don't know. But
I like him. I like him in the second Elite Squad quite a bit. I think I don't know. It's hard to compare the two, but I might prefer the Secret Agent. But definitely let us know which one you prefer. And also, we would love to have more recommendations for Brazilian films. They can be all over the place, stuff that we definitely have to check out, and we'll make sure to at some point get to it, because every week in this Spotlight World Cinema section we're talking about different films that aren't American or English films. I think for both of these films I gave it like an 8 out of 10 rating. I do prefer the second one, I think, slightly more. Maybe it is because there's a bit more of a hopeful ending to it, although that like slightly takes it down for me even. Because it feels like it's wrapping up the story quite neatly in the second one, a bit more than like the messiness of the first one, which really effectively ends like with a like tilt up to like the white sky.
To Andre, yeah.
It's quite haunting. But yeah, I think you're on the same wavelength here with me, right? With an 8 out of 10 here.
I actually bumped my rating up just a bit on the first Elite Squad because of that messiness, because of that anger and that energy that I'm lacking just a tiny bit of in the second one. I do prefer the first Elite Squad a bit over the second one, but I still think they're both so much on par. They are so well connected. The ones, and like I told you, like the first one is like gritty, and like the second one really works more on a bureaucratic level, on like a higher up level, and that's why I think they balance each other out so perfectly. So yeah, I gave the first one a 9 out of 10, and the second one I gave an 8 out of 10. But they are both brilliant films, and you should definitely check them out if you haven't already.